A little bit about Oh No, Not Another Meeting. I'm sure everyone in this room has probably led many meetings and probably attended a heck of a lot more. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
No doubt. And I think one of the biggest challenges with meetings is getting people sort of head around, the participants sort of getting their head around the fact that these are actually worthwhile endeavors. Right? I think that's one of the challenges. And I know certainly in my years of doing this, and I've run and owned a number of businesses over the last 20 years, as well as been doing this sort of training and teaching and presenting literally worldwide. And I think it's pretty much universal that meetings are one of those things that we know we have to do, but a lot of people really don't relish them or embrace them. And there's a number of reasons for that. And there's a lot of simple reasons, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot of little things that we can do as meeting facilitators. I just want to throw a quiz up, because I know that's a great way to build a rapport with a new group, is to give them a test early in the morning. So this is kind of a fun one, though, in terms of, you know you've run an effective meeting when the meeting participants cheer and applaud at its conclusion. No? Now, not that I expect that here today, although it would be nice, thank you very much. No. The industrial-sized Starbucks coffee tub at the back of the room is empty. No? Someone make sure that's full so people know I don't leave. Okay. Or at least 2/3 of the participants have come to from their deep REM sleep. Any correct answer? No. Been there? Seen this? Done that? Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to give you, actually it's in the handout that's actually in your binder. On the second page, if you just want to go to the very bottom of that second page, they'll say, check out this great research article below. It really is, I sort of scour the internet, and I have for years on information on this, and it's just a super empirical based study, but also there's some anecdotal stuff just around meetings and perceptions of meetings, and there's some really good quotes, but also some really good research that backs up a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today. So it's not just all based on my experience, although a lot of it is, in all fairness. A lot of this is backed up by the research as well, and I really strongly suggest you go to that link if you're interested in this area, because there's a wealth of information in that article. Let me ask a question then to the group real quickly, and I think what we can do is just take a couple minutes, and maybe you can just chat about this at your table just for a moment. And the question I've got to the group is, could you discuss, based on your experience of meetings, whether you've been running them or being participants of them, what have you found to be some of the best meeting practices that result in efficient and effective meetings? Another way to look at this is, normally, if you go to a really well-run meeting, it stands out. And usually the reason it stands out is not necessarily that it's so good, it's unfortunately the bar is so low in many cases. And I hate to be negative that way, but unfortunately that is the case. So again, if you could just take a minute at your table, I'll just pick a couple of folks that don't mind sort of having some input in a couple of minutes. What have you found are some of the best practices at those meetings that really sort of hit the objective or the agenda for that day? We'll just give you a couple moments at your table just to sort of buzz up. So if I could just get us to reconvene for a moment, so I don't want to spend too long on this. We've only got the hour. I'm sure we could spend probably 45 minutes on this conversation alone. So what were some of the things that you had found, in other words, some best practices? Just sort of go around the room, nice and loud so everyone can hear.
The first thing that we had was actually having a formal agenda.
Having an agenda.
And a structured agenda. Time, approximate timings and whatnot. And having the chair confident enough to keep to the agenda. Not allowing discussion to go too far off course. Keeping the board focused.
Key words, and again, we're going to pick up on those, is the structure. I think structures are real important. And I don't necessarily mean it has to be a sort of a military style structure, but a structure nevertheless. When you've got a structure and an obvious structure, it says to the participants what? It's important, it's organized, and I've spent some time actually thinking about this prior to the actual facilitation of the meeting. So another hand over here, yeah.
We said beginning and ending on time. It's really important.
Especially the ending part. Right?
Yeah.
Noted.
No.
I'm just picking up some stuff.
No.
Thank you. Yes.
Action item or summary at the end.
Right. So actually doing something and then summary. Yeah. Concept. Really not challenging business metric concepts when you think about it. Great. Thank you. A couple more.
We talked about the material in advance.
Material in advance. Yep. You know, it's funny, the challenge has become, just as a real quick side, the challenge has become, certainly in the information age that we're in, and that everything's done by email and everything else. You know, at one point when you actually had to send an agenda out, and you had to send a hard copy out and actually had to root around the office. Some of you will remember that. You know, there was some advantage in sending it out 3-4 weeks in advance, and now, you know, there's different camps of thought in terms of if you send it out electronically too early, it gets caught in with the 600 other emails to go through, and therefore it gets forgot. So therefore, how close is close enough? It's a bit of a dilemma. But no doubt, the mere fact of an agenda and having it sent out, again, says to the participants, you've thought about this, there's some organization, there's some structure. What else? So one more that we have? Yes?
Expectation of what individuals are there for. Somebody may do a presentation of it, somebody may bring an expertise you want.
Right. And it's fair to say one of the things that someone said to me many years ago was, you know, if you certainly don't know what the expectations of the meeting are, you can bet your life the participants won't know what their expectations are. So it goes back to what we originally said. One last comment in the back.
Who should be at the, who are the participants? If it is a decision-making meeting, need people there to be decision makers.
Right, right. Nothing is more frustrating. I'm sure we've all gone through this where, you know, you have some good brainstorming sessions, some great problem solving, and you get to the end and say, okay, let's make a decision on this. And everyone says, well, you know, Jane's not here and she's going to make the decision. It's like, okay. So then it ends up being rewound again. Exactly. Thank you for that. I mean, again, it's pretty much universal, some of these challenges and some of these issues, as I said, that can be seen when you look at that article as well that I mentioned earlier. So, the plan is for today, based on this conversation, real briefly, is we'll talk a little bit about getting return, and I know this is a group that gets that, definitely gets that. But when I talk about return, we're not going to go necessarily a hardcore financial analysis on a meeting, but I want to do a little exercise that we're going to do as a group in a couple of moments, just to give you a feel for exactly how much money is spent on meetings per year in an average corporation. And it's going to be very, very rounded up and rounded down math. Take it from me. But it'll give you a feeling of like, wow, this is a significant investment we make every year. Talk a little bit about what was mentioned here, about the importance of a plan and structure. And again, I don't mean necessarily to the level of it has to be a military exercise, but yes, plan and structure is critical. Some simple tips and techniques on that. Certainly something that we've all dealt with, you know, what I call the passive participant syndrome. I notice that's not happening here, that's good. It must be that industrial Starbucks coffee we talked about earlier. And then some just general quick tips on anything from PowerPoint to how to work within a meeting room to standing and to movement, all sorts of things that we don't take into account many times when we're running a meeting, but actually have an impact on the entire experience of running a meeting. So that's kind of the plan up until we're done at 12:30, correct? Perfect. A little summary as well. So, shameless promotion here. A lot of this is based on, I wrote a book on this a number of years ago. That's why I put the insert the shameless promotion piece here. Just call it what it is, Tony. But I do have some of these afterwards if people are interested. I wrote it a number of years ago, and it has a lot of these things, as well as other things. It's in chapters and a few things, so I'm kind of proud of that. I didn't expect that to happen originally, but it's kind of fun how things take off. So anyways, I do have some for those that are interested. But a lot of the graphics that you'll see today is sort of built from this book. I'll give you a couple of these to read. I won't read them to you. I'll let you read them. Yeah, they hit home, don't they? They hit home. And again, that's that one I mentioned early on already a couple of times, so the link is in there. And I like the title of this slide, Meetings on Our as an Oxymoron, for the exact reason. As I truly believe that most people that go into running meetings, they haven't really given a thought about the fact that it is an investment. And as you know oh so well, I mean, any investment, you expect what? Return. And so that's really what this slide is about, is getting a feel for exactly what sort of investment are we looking at when we're looking at meetings. So I want to do, if I had a longer time and we had a more of a training session, we do this in the table. But I think, again, given the group and your math acumen, I'm going to assume, we can do this real quick. If you go over to page number, somebody's already there, I noticed, page number 3. And just, yeah, I'm not supposed to hear uh-ohs. I'm not supposed to hear uh-ohs. This is something that participants, so you might not only
instead of just getting people in a room and thinking, oh, I'm supposed to hold meetings, I'll tick it off my to-do list.
Any of you ever remember seeing, some of you, once again, closer to my age, may have seen the John Cleese movies, video arts, Meetings, Bloody Meetings. Some people remember that term. Some of you. You know, great video. I don't show it anymore, even though they've updated it and stuff. I don't show it as much anymore. But it was a great synopsis. And he basically goes up in front of a judge for running poor meetings. He's charged with running poor meetings. And that's the premise of the video. And it's just great because, you know, at one point it's, well, you know, why did you run that meeting? And it was, well, we always do. It's the monthly meeting. Yeah, but what was your intention? To meet. Meet. It's like, but what do you intend to get out of it? Well, it's the monthly meeting. And he just couldn't get it, right? It was like, well, it's like Everest. You did it because it was there. And I thought, you know, it was such a great vignette that sometimes we get into these sort of corporate kind of just habits. And it's like, well, we do it every week, or we do it every month, so let's just do it again, despite the fact we might not have anything to talk about, or there's any value, we just sort of do it. And I think that video shows a great snippet of that. So, how do we try to make these meetings more effective, efficient, productive, etc.? Well, I actually have a couple more quotes. Let me skip that first. So, when all the costs are added up, it blows your mind. Hence, we've just gone there. So, key to success number one, and again, you just sort of follow along. Most of this is in your the handout. I maybe have structured it sometimes a little bit differently. And I think it goes back to what was said over here, is that 100% crystal clear of why you're holding that meeting. And again, for some of you, you're probably going, duh, come on, Tony, that's pretty standard. It's not pretty standard. It's not pretty standard. We sometimes go into these meetings for a fact that, yes, we're supposed to do it. It's on our HR metric report. It's on our performance. We have to run a once a month, once a week meeting, but not really going into it of why we're doing it. And the 4 questions I've used for years to sort of, kind of as an acid test or a litmus test, is probably the best way to look at this, to see if we actually need to run this meeting, is one is, you know, what are we trying to accomplish? You know, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? And you'll notice in, I think, the next 5 pages afterward in your workbook, which I'm not going to go into any detail, what I've done for you is I've laid out sort of traditional types of meetings and a little bit about drawbacks, advantages, when to use them, number of people best suited for, things to be aware of, whether it be a team building meeting, an input-based meeting, a decision-making meeting. I think that's the first thing, from my perspective, is what are we trying to accomplish? Start to kind of, you know, just kind of funnel in. And it was such an interesting first day for me to do something, because I really didn't know what to expect over there as a guy that's trained around the world, but never in the Middle East. I didn't know quite what to expect. And, you know, at about 3 o'clock, and it was planned to go to 4:30, 5 o'clock, and to a couple of them, I said, this has been really good, Tony, thank you. We're going back to work now. So they decided to finish at 3, and and it's like, but they got what they wanted from the day and enjoyed it and felt they had learned, and they just went on. So it was just so this whole idea of punctuality and all that stuff that drives some of us here crazy. And back when I'm here, it's a real bone of contention for me personally when I'm running meetings. Other areas of the world, it's not always the case. But you set that mode, and guess what? The next day, I wasn't so hardcore and trying to be there for 9 o'clock. So it even affected me, saying, if I get there at 9:15, I'll be okay. And I'm the guy running it. And all of a sudden, I got laissez-faire about it. So, you know, I'll talk about it's sort of a one begets the other. Anyways, it's just, I wanted to share that with you because, as I said, it's just I think, a funny story. But I've used this, and this is one of the little graphics in my book, but I use this for all sorts of team-based things, and the adaptation for this is the structure is going to depend on the type of meeting that you run. If this is a once-off meeting, then the structure still needs to be there, but it might not be quite as formal. But if this is ongoing meetings with a team of people, for example, which many of you I'm sure run, you know, having some sort of a foundation And this is the model that I've used before, and it's very simple, really. Again, there's not really any rocket science behind this, but the concept of, the goals. So why are we here? And the goals can be as big as, what's the goal or the charter of this team, if you're talking more from a team perspective. When we talk about a meeting, it can be, what are the goals of the meeting? What are we trying to get out of this meeting? Roles. I'm here as the IT manager, and this is a meeting about marketing. What's my role here? Your role really is to be able to take in the information and bring it back to your group, anything that might impinge upon their day-to-day work. Oh, okay, now I understand why I've been invited. Oh, your role is you actually need to help us make the decision of how we're going to roll this out. Oh, good, thank you. I wasn't aware of that. So roles can be formal within a team, or they can be more informal within the meeting. I think most people don't mind going to a meeting if they know what their role is and it's defined in some way. Procedures. Again, I don't necessarily mean it doesn't have to be, quorums and things like that, but it is nice to have some procedures within, do we need a certain amount of people if we're going to make a decision to run this meeting? How do we work in terms of, do we expect input from everyone in the group or just from the team leaders? Well, what are the procedures? How are we going to do it, in other words? And what I find is, again, if you look at this from a team perspective, you have these things, trust starts to build, not necessarily in each other, but trust begins in the process, if nothing else. At least there's trust in the process. Apply this to more of a team building, then hopefully you can start to build trust amongst one another as well. So I'm sort of playing both roles here for a moment. But trust, at least in the process, comes within the meeting. And I use this, a lot of times when I'm involved in running a meeting, I'll sometimes just take literally the flip chart and I'll just do this pyramid. I'll put GRP, and we'll leave the trust because that hopefully comes by itself. If you've done all this stuff, so okay, so what are our goals? And we work on goals, and we work on roles, and we work on procedures. And it's funny, by the time you've done that, you start to see the openness start to occur and the engagement. So I've used this model in a number of different ways, but it's a real simple one to use. The antithesis of it, if it's not there, and this is unfortunately what we experience a lot in many meeting situations, let alone team situations, if the goals aren't clear, the roles are somewhat confusing or ambiguous, procedures don't even know where they are, let alone do they exist. Hence you get that distressed, stressed type of environment. No, again, I'm making some broad blanket. But I think most people can probably appreciate where this is coming from. So that's really, so we can spend a lot more time just on talking about structure, but if you just keep if you think about this, even if you go back to something as simple as, I'll go back to, I believe it was slide 4. There's not a lot of structure but that was our agenda for today. It's simple. We're not getting into roles and all that because this is more of a presentation than a meeting per se.